All right, everyone. President Bone Spurs was trending briefly yesterday. The left has now come full circle. For a long time, they were anti-war. They were like, "Oh, Bush is destroying our credibility. He's like killing civilians, and we shouldn't be in Afghanistan. We shouldn't be in Iraq. We should never have been in Vietnam, or we should leave Korea. We should abandon everything, have no military, basically." For a long time, the left was more anti-war, not anti-war completely. Like the politicians, they all voted for Iraq. Bernie Sanders was the only person, I think, at the time who voted against invading Iraq, and I don't think anyone voted against funding it once it had begun. So the left isn't totally anti-war, but there's was a significant strain, a sentiment against war, especially proxy war. The general reigning ethos was, hey, okay, we should have a strong military if we need to use it, but we should use it sparingly, and we shouldn't be using it for proxy conflict. It's pointless. We don't win because there's no way to win if you don't have goals. You don't even know what you're trying to accomplish. So it's just stupid. It's also immoral. It causes misery. It probably also causes terrorism, because when you go into another country and you bomb everything to shit, people tend to get a little bit upset at your nation. They tend to blame the civilian population as much as they do the politicians, which is wrong. But they're the ones that are going to actually get killed in the crossfire. So then you get like jihad attacks and stuff. But the left now is very jingoistic. So they have that Navy SEAL dude on who, oh, I shot Osama through the forehead, basically, and, here's what I have to say, as though he knows absolutely everything on these subjects. But Trump, he can't know anything because he's a draft dodger. He got deferments for bone spurs in his feet. He weaseled his way into not going off to die in Vietnam. Now, that's funny. Thousands and thousands of people did so. The Democratic Party has hailed them as heroes. They still have Jane Fonda there. They hold her up on a pedestal, say she's one of the greatest people ever to have lived. What about the Weather Underground? Obama's good friend there, what was his name? I can't even remember. The dude that was building bombs for the Weather Underground was like the founder of their movement. An anarcho-terrorist. A literal terrorist. Labeled a terrorist by the U.S. government. The same U.S. government that they now ignore when it makes that designation, but they accept it as long as the president has a D after their name. This makes total sense to me. Actually, it doesn't make any sense at all to anyone with sanity, but you get where I'm coming from. It's called sarcasm. It's funny. So Jane Fonda's good. The Weather Underground's good. Everybody else who avoided fighting in Vietnam is good. Communism's okay, according to them. Like, oh yeah, socialism's for the cool kids, says CNN. That's all great, but for Trump to have avoided it, that suddenly becomes a problem because, he's our president. When's the last time that we had a president there who was a bona fide veteran? I don't mean like George W. Oh yeah, I can fly plane. Had base job due to rich, powerful fucking daddy. I'm not talking about that. Obama wasn't a veteran. No, Obama was busy hanging out with the people who were, would attack the Veterans Office. Bill Clinton? No, Bill Clinton's mushy. He couldn't do anything. If you ever sent him, he was more like a hippie too at the time. If you ever sent him into foreign combat, he'd piss his pants probably. George W., he never had to go fight. Herbert Walker never had to go fight. I don't even think Reagan was a combat veteran, if I remember correctly. I don't think he was in war. Did he even have military experience? I'm not even 100% sure. I think Gerald Ford did. I think that would be the most recent time. I mean, Gerald Ford, single term, taking over for disgraced Nixon, basically did nothing outside of the space program, and I think he was the last one that had been, I think he was in Korea, if I remember correctly. I think. I'm not 100% sure. Either way, he was a football player, so he was buff enough to go into war at least. I know JFK, he was in the military, and Eisenhower, of course, famously so. No, recently we haven't exactly had, decorated combat veterans in that highest office. We rarely get them in the Senate or House either, because typically those people get outperformed by people with lots of corporate buddies, lawyers and businessmen, including Donald Trump, lifelong, multi-billionaire businessman. It's very funny. This just fits into the same one-dimensionality propaganda that's been spun around him before. I don't even think the Democrats fully realize how much they're denigrating their own credibility when they make these claims, by the way. Because they've pissed away, think about where they got social capital from for youth vote. Anti-war. Well, now it's the far right's anti-war. The rhinos are still pro-war. The Democrats have become pro-war, like the liberals, at least the neoliberals have. That means you basically got the progressive Sanders fringe is more or less anti-war, and the alt-right. Those are your anti-war movements. The actual left and the actual right are against war. The center, the establishment, they're all in favor of proxy wars. Covert, overt, bombs dropping, troops marching in, doesn't really matter. And if you avoid that, you're unpatriotic, but at the same time, it was a great thing for everyone else that did it. So now you're telling me that the Democrats at the left that love Fonda, that love the Weather Underground and all of these other, great things, so-called, that love socialism, now they applaud a war against the commies back, in the day, and anyone who avoided it, well, there's something wrong with them. You do realize you probably just pissed off all those other generally liberal individuals. I think it was Jimmy Carter that pardoned them, who avoided the war. They were pardoned for a reason, because the war was unjust and built on false pretenses. Look up the Gulf of Tonkin incident at some point. You just see for yourself, and by the way, it's also evidence that the government totally fucking lied to everybody at the time to start its war, and then to accomplish nothing. Communism still won there, and now the so-called communist remnant in Vietnam is no longer really communistic. Now they're drinking Coca-Cola. Economically, we totally won over time. That's basically, economically speaking, we can win at anything. In an actual standardized fight, we can win too, but when we do the proxy war thing, I think I can't think of an instance in which we've won a proxy war. I'm drawing a blank. We didn't win in Iraq, obviously. That's still the country's still destabilized. The Iraqis themselves finally formed a stable government. It's halfway decent in the urban areas, I guess. Still got ISIS problems. Afghanistan, did we really win there? No, we're talking about fucking negotiating with the Taliban to suppress ISIS at this point. We did such a piss-poor job under W and Obama in Afghanistan, we have to make deals with Al-Qaeda at this point. Just think about that for a minute. Korea, war is still going. Vietnam, no, we lost there. The Persian Gulf War, well, yeah, we beat Saddam within an inch of his life, then scaled back, refused to finish the job, leading to problems later on. No, we don't win proxy wars. And for Trump to not want to go fight in a proxy war, I think that's justified. I actually think it's noble. Yeah, I think it's noble. Look, the draft should never have existed. A volunteer military will always outperform a conscripted military, number one. Number two, the draft system was rife with problems anyway, to the point at which, here's $1,000. You don't need me right now. Call me up next time. Maybe you can make another 1,000 the next time the draft lottery goes through, however fucking system they use. And it was moronic. It's a moronic system, forcing people to go fight. Oh, we're going to force you to go fight for freedom in a war that is not defensive. That's unjustified. No, it should be totally banned. There should be a constitutional amendment should be put in place that if a draft occurs, the first people that should be sent are all the children of all the senators and congressmen. Maybe that'll make them think twice about starting a war. Yeah, maybe that would help. All the lawyers, you take the rich kids first. They should be we should have a Greek-style system like they had their hoplite. Only the nobles who could afford to have their own armor and weapons constructed, they were the only ones that were able to go. They looked at it as a gentleman's war. That became a problem as far as troop numbers went until the time of Julius Caesar, very wisely deciding that farmhands and brute laborers made good soldiers too, actually were kind of better because they were used to a rougher life. So he's like, fuck these rich kids. They don't know how to fight. I'm going to take all the peasants. And that was a great thing at the time. No, we should go back to that Greek system. Look, manpower is not a problem. You can have poor people, if they want to volunteer to fight, some, farm kid or something, that's fine. But the first ones, if we're going to have a draft, it should be based on income and it should take from the top 10% first. That's what we should do. I bet you wouldn't see many proxy wars from that moment forward. We want to enforce anti-war rhetoric so that we strictly, if we're going to fight at all, we're only going to fight offensively when we've been attacked or an ally's been attacked. Otherwise, we're going to mind our own business. If you want that, just make sure that all those rich lawyers' kids get called up first. Make it a total make them a total pariah. If they try to flee the country, they lose their citizenship. They get stripped of it. They have to become an outcast. They'd have to come back in on get a green card or something. That's what we should do. Yeah. By the way, I think you can tell I'm anti-war. I'm not a pacifist. I think there are wars that are justified. Like if we hauled off and attacked North Korea tomorrow, I would think it was justified because they've already made considerable threats to not just us but our allies. And there have been actual incidents that would qualify as acts of war in the past. You know, you could retroactively look at the various random artillery strikes and attempts to assassinate people as acts of war if you wanted. There's no other theater in the world today I can think of where we're justified being present in an offensive role. We shouldn't be involved in Yemen. We shouldn't be involved in Iraq or Afghanistan. We shouldn't be in these places. The local government should take care of it. It's their country. It's their fucking responsibility. You want to give them some aid, it's a lot cheaper than dropping bombs. So yeah, for the leftists, ooh, Trump's a draft dodger, he doesn't know anything about military. Ha ha, the commander-in-chief isn't a commander-in-chief because he dodged the draft. Yeah, so fucking what, dude? You usually say that those that avoided going into Vietnam were justified in doing so because like, oh, it's pointless. Why are we even there? No shit. You know, go and suck Jane Fonda off some more. That's about all. Peace out.